Welcome to Breaking Barriers. You know your path. We know the obstacles, and we can teach you how to tear them down. And now your host, CEO and founder of Adapting Social, John Vigero.
So guys, welcome back to Breaking Barriers. I'm super excited to have Sabrina Winters here with us. And I'm really excited though too, because I think there's a lot that people need to learn about estate planning that I don't think most people do know, right? So I'm really excited to have you on. But Sabrina, for people who, are like, hey, who is Sabrina? Can you kind of give us a high level?
Oh, sure, of course. Well, thanks, John, for having me on. I'm excited to be here. Who's Sabrina? Well, first, I'm a mom. I'm first generation Italian.
Oh.
Yep, I'm a wife. My parents, they were insistent that we learn Italian. So we speak it fluently, we read it fluently, we write it fluently. And it was pretty much the only way we could communicate with the majority of my family. So, if we wanted to speak with them, we needed to, because, my parents immigrated from Italy. And that was one of the biggest goals they had for us. And I'm a law firm owner, been one since 2005 in North Carolina. But I practiced in estate planning since 1998. And even before that, before I graduated law school and got into estate planning because of a personal family issue when I graduated. So,
wow.
Yeah.
One of the things that I saw this, and first of all, thank you for that high level. And I'm honestly honored to have you on. So absolutely. So one of the things though too that I think for people listening here, it's so interesting. So when you think of estate planning, a lot of times, younger people in their 20s, I would say even like in their early 30s, it's something that is not thought about, right? They're like, oh, I have time.
Right.
But things happen, right? And it's pretty scary. And it's like, I actually had a conversation with one of my family members, and my grandfather died a long time ago, but we have a house in Portugal. I'm Portuguese. And
oh, nice.
Yeah. So and so he left his house that he built for the family, to the family and stuff. But he didn't have a living will, and there wasn't any of those things. So like again, things get crazy like that. So for the people out there that have that mindset or are harboring the mindset of like, hey, you know what, like I don't need this right now, or it's too expensive for me to do right now, or it's not worth it for me to do, what would you say to those people?
Well, first of all, my husband's family is from Portugal. So
there you go.
That's awesome. I usually just share my story because we are not promised tomorrow. And I can't say that enough. During the year, I've done this for 20 years. I've seen some pretty ugly things happen, pretty sad things. And the biggest thing was when my uncle had nothing in writing. He was older, but he got sick pretty quickly. Nobody knew that he was going to be sick and unable to make his medical decisions. So I always tell people, you don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. And, I compare it to insurance. So we all have car insurance. If you've got a car, we've got homeowners insurance, we've got life insurance. And that's all because of the what if. But for the when, which is we will all die, we give it very little thought because we're afraid to approach it. We're afraid to talk about it. It becomes taboo. We need to talk about it more often. And I just always say, you don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. So you got to plan today, regardless of how healthy you are, how wealthy you think you are, whether you're married, divorced, single, with kids. Like it just doesn't matter. This is the one thing every single one of us shares in common, is that we're going to pass away. We just don't always know when or how.
Right. And that's freaky. And you know what though? Like I'll never forget the time where, because I started my business when I was 17, I'm going to be 31 now. And, I remember my old accountant at the time, he was like, you got to start setting up retirement and all this other stuff. And I'm like 19 years old. I'm like, I'm not worried about retirement. but it's like one of these things where, again, to your point, again, there's so many outliers and so many things, so many variables, and you just never know, right? Like you never know. So I think it's important to have that. That's really cool. I appreciate you sharing that. So talk us a little bit more about you, right? So how did you start your own practice? Did you have like this entrepreneur bug where you're like, I don't want to go work for somebody else and do it? Like, how did that start for you?
Gosh, so I got to give you a little bit of a backstory first to that. So, being one of three kids from parents who came to this country because they wanted better for us, there was no choice, but you were going to college, you were going to have a career, and you were going to be able to support yourself regardless of whether you got married or what.
Right.
So when they heard me say at a really young age, I want to be a lawyer, like for them, it was set in stone. There's no other choice. Like that's what it's going to be because we're sacrificing for that. And it was really something that I wanted to do. So at every stage since I was 16, I was working in a law firm in some level, in some capacity. All I ever wanted to do was prosecuting work, like the criminal things that always excited me. It was very exciting. Even the last semester of law school, I saved all 12 electives to work in major crimes for my electives. But I didn't like it. Like it was the worst experience ever. It didn't fit my personality. It didn't fit how I connected with people. And then my uncle got sick. And I had to watch all of the terrible things happen to him, and we couldn't control it. And that was the very moment I decided I'm going to do estate planning. There is no way that other families should go through what we did. Like having nothing in writing, it's 20 years later, my father still tears up when he thinks about the decisions he could have made, but he couldn't because nothing was in writing. And my family, nobody agreed on what to do with him.
Right.
So, standing next to my dad, watching him watch his brother slowly pass away was really hard. And then we had to settle his estate with nothing in writing. And I just graduated law school. So, I knew I was studying for the bar while he was getting sick and in the process of dying.
Right.
And I just thought first of all, there is just no way that I can see the family go through this. So it literally took a day for me to switch from my lifelong want of doing something in the criminal law field to this was, going to be my focus. So that's how I got into estate planning. How I got into my own practice was really a bad experience. It was just a really bad experience when I started working for somebody here. So I was working in New York for 4 years with a fantastic solo practitioner. I mean, he let me make my mistakes. He let me learn. Like he threw me in. And he was just an amazing lawyer to his clients and to me as his employee. And then we moved down to Charlotte, North Carolina. And I worked for an attorney who was a narcissist, an egomaniac. Women couldn't be any further beneath him if he tried. It was really bad.
Wow.
And so I just thought, okay, there's just no way that, I can work for somebody down here if this is what it's going to be like. I sought out a solo practitioner to work for because I had the most amazing experience with the attorney back in New York who only did estate planning and probate. And I loved it. And I loved him. And I loved the practice. And I think it had so much to do with him. So I come down here. I have this god-awful experience. I was miserable the whole time. And I thought, it's not going to happen. Right. So I quit. I took the bar here. I passed it. And the day I received my bar pass letter, I filed with the Secretary of State to open up my own practice. And that was in 2005.
Oh.
Yep.
Did you tell the other guy to fuck off?
Not in so many words, but trust me, it was. But you know what? I felt like that was completely his loss.
Yeah.
There's no way he could have had a better employee like me coming with all of that experience already. I could have brought a lot to his table, but he was threatened by the fact that I was a woman, that I spoke my mind. I was always very respectful, but I've always known what I wanted. I've never diverted myself from what I wanted my character to be. And he wasn't happy with that. So, I'd say no to things that I was asked to do that I knew the bar wouldn't let me do because technically I was just a paralegal still. I hadn't taken my bar to, pass it and get my license.
Right.
So I'm actually thankful for the experience. I'm not sure I would be in a successful, growing, exploding practice right now if he didn't show me that actually was a reminder of this isn't who you are.
Right.
It's just not. You got to do bigger things, better things. And I always do things because my daughter's watching me. You
Oh
know,
yeah. Oh
it's
yeah.
she is always watching me, whether, it's on social media or whether it's with, somebody in public. Like, she's always seeing what I'm doing.
Right.
And I'm always aware of that way more, now that she's getting older. But so that's why my practice, is created and done the way I do it, because it's breaking those stigmas that people think lawyers are.
Right.
It's breaking the impression that they think they're going to have when they come see me.
Right.
And it's the shock that, I hear all the time, are you a lawyer, like, for real? Or like, this is what you do? I'm like, yeah, sorry that you've had bad experiences, but we're here to show you that it's not always like that. It just shouldn't be like that.
Right. Right. So first off, badass. I love it. It's such a great story. And again, I always say this, but I think life gives us, life happens for us, not against us, even when it's tough, turbulent times. I mean,
Totally.
everybody that I know that I respect, and I would assume same for you, is people who have been calloused and experienced through life's hard things that they went through and became out on the other side stronger people from it, and have experienced that. Like, people love experienced people because they know they've been through it. So
Right.
cool that you've experienced that journey. You got out of that toxic environment, and eventually started your own thing. I think a lot of people don't do that, so it's really cool that you took that liberty and that opportunity to jump in, go do it yourself, and get after it. So it's very, very cool.
Thanks. I had no clue what I was doing. So
And
which is
I've only, and what's so awesome, I've only grown up, and also, like, most of our executive and leadership staff here at Adapting is women, right? And so I've only been around strong, women who voice their opinion. My mom's that way, my wife's that way. So,
yeah.
I've only grown up around that. So it's like, organizations that don't want that is so, their heads buried in the sand deeper than I can imagine. But
Right. It's hard to understand
yeah,
why, it's not set up like that.
yeah. So talk to me about, so is there anybody right now that in the world, whether it's, you're learning from or watching online, or who motivates Sabrina right now in terms of just entrepreneurship or growth or personal development?
I got to tell you, there's probably a handful of my colleagues
Yeah.
that I do look up to. I think everybody needs that one or two person in their life that is doing what they're doing and gets it.
Right.
And, I've got a couple of colleagues that I can just call up and go, can you just believe this happened? And not feel like I'm judged, not feel like I can't believe that happened to you. Like, that's never happened to me.
Right.
But, mostly it's me. It's just me. I can't control my reputation, because everybody, no matter what I do, is
Mhm.
always going to have their own interpretation of me. So as long as I'm of character and everything that comes out of me is who I want people to see, then I'm good. And so I am my worst critic. I am the worst judge for myself. And if I let myself down, that motivates me to do better and do more.
Right. So that's awesome. I'm taking a note here on that. So that's cool, and I think not enough people spend enough time when it comes to personal development, or the effort. And I actually listened to this morning. Somebody sent this to me, and it really, I'm trying to find the quote real quick. So I found this quote, and literally, or it was more of a video, but like, it was like, we take all the time in the world to, like, update our software for our phones, our iPads, our computers, or this or that, whatever. But like, we don't take the time to actually update our own software, meaning, like, reassess, learn new things, put the time into new programming of, like, how we think about something or how we can do something better.
Yep.
And it's really important that we spend that time. The best investment that we can ever make is the investment we put in ourselves, right? So for our own growth and education. And you being an attorney who went through probably a lot of school, I guess you would agree with that.
Yeah. And, I got to be honest, it wasn't like that always for me. It was, I was always motivated. Getting into law school was difficult for me. Staying in and graduating was difficult for me.
Right.
I always was focused on what I wanted. And it helped that I had parents supporting me and encouraging me, but I was always focused. So I put everything on hold, even dating, truly dating,
Yeah.
getting married. Like, I wanted my career in place. And my father always said, listen, I don't care what your life turns out, if you get married or not, or have kids or not.
Right.
All I want to know is that you can support yourself and you don't need somebody else to support you.
Right.
And so it was great advice. And I listened to it. I always have had great respect for my parents. My dad tends to be my favorite. But it was just something that motivated me. I was going to go to law school. I was going to graduate no matter what it took.
Right.
And I was going to pass the New York bar in the first try, no matter what it took.
Right.
And I did it for free. But then I lost myself trying to get my career going. Yeah, I lost myself in, what do I do next? What's the best job opportunity? Learning. And, as a woman business owner, you tend to lose yourself because you're always trying, you always have a client that you're trying to make happy and help. Right. And then there's your family you're trying to support and make sure that they're supporting you. And you tend to lose focus of, you wanted that career, but what good are you in that career if you're not you anymore? And this took me a long time to, sit down and reevaluate myself. And I think, when I turned 50, the COVID 50, I sat down and I was like, okay, where's this practice going for real?
Yep.
What am I going to do to get it there? And what's my plan when I'm done here? Because I don't think you can teach somebody to be a planner. It's just me. And it comes from my engineering dad. Everything is planned out. I write things down. I check things off. Like, you're not going to find a more neurotic planner than me. And I planned the most of everything except where I wanted to really be, not where I thought I needed to be, which I think are really oftentimes two different things.
Totally.
Yeah. But then I sat down and I said, where are you going, Sabrina? How are you going to get there? I made a plan, and that's where we're going to go.
So, it's so challenging. Well, it's an interesting thought, but it's challenging. So to your point, I was at a leadership development, retreat, or summit, or whatever you want to call it, in Connecticut a couple of years back before COVID. And this part of it was like, finding your edge, right? It was called leadership edge, finding that edge. And one of the things that poked out for me was, he said to me, John, who would you be without your business or the businesses that you're in? Like, put entrepreneur John aside. Who are you, right? And I've been doing this since I'm 17. So for me, like, from sophomore of high school to not going to college and to continue to build my business to this point today, I don't really know myself without the entrepreneurs in me. And he said to me, like, again, you have to develop these other parts of yourself, because, when you're only focused on that entrepreneur John, right? It's like, there's a lot of other things to offer, right? Like, me and my wife are, thank God, we're welcoming our first son, our first kid ever.
Great. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. And that was a journey in its own. But like, the whole thing is like, to your point, I think sometimes every entrepreneur needs to have that sit down moment where you're like, okay, what do I want, right? Like, where do I want to go? What, because again, business could be a vacuum of your time. And
well, now I feel like I was behind the 8 ball. You got that job done a lot younger. It took me a lot longer to realize that, but I totally, you really do. You need to sit down and evaluate. And now that you're adding to your family, you're gonna start looking at yourself differently. It's just that's just how it is.
Right.
And you evaluate yourself. Like, it took me a really long time to have my daughter, to the point where we were only able to have her. And I'm not the same person that I was 16 years ago. I'm not the same person I was a year ago.
Right.
And because so much of it is about her, and
Right.
about what I want her to see. I mean, I've missed things. I've missed
Right.
soccer games. I've missed, watching a movie with her because I fell asleep on the couch because I was exhausted. But what I'm hoping she sees is that her mom's a hustler. Her mom's not going to sit back and just let things happen. She's going to make them happen, and that
Right.
she'll appreciate all of that, years from now when she sees what her mom did. And she had the support of her dad too. We're a
Right.
team, but she's going to see, I get it now. She still needed to be her own person, but she was still my mom the whole time. I
Right.
just didn't see it when I was in it. Kind of like
Oh,
I did when I was her age.
yeah.
So,
Yeah. And I feel your pain there. It took me and my wife 4 years.
yeah.
I'm not sure, obviously, but either way, that's why I said it's a challenge in its own. But like, it's tough, especially when you're in those positions. So I really appreciate you sharing that. And so we're at our final minute here. And so
Yeah.
one question I want to ask you. So essentially, this is my tough question. Ready? But you're a planner, so I don't know if it's gonna be tough for you. So I like to ask this question. I like to reverse engineer the thought process of legacy, right? And like where we look at like, typically the natural Joe or Jane Doe, looks at like, what legacy and like the future and who I want to become is like where my feet are today and who I want to be in the rest of the way there. And the way this question is formatted is to make you think about it from the end backwards, right?
Yep.
So if you were to, again, today was your day essentially, and you had to write your gravestone, right? The one thing that's left here, that's going to supersede your daughter, her kids, their kids, whoever. What would that gravestone read if you were to write that right here, right now, today?
Wow, that's a good one. I would say she was herself and she was always true.
That's awesome. No matter what, it's the Italian woman way.
That's right. You get what you see all the time.
That's my wife, 100%. But no, that's beautiful. That's so deep. And I always like to ask that question because a lot of times, again, like those are your core values, right? And so for you, like you're not going to bend those, and it's really good because when I never forget, I like to call myself, I'm a recovering people pleaser, right? So like,
Yeah.
as a leader in an organization, with a lot of team members in it, in the beginning of my career, it was like very like, oh, I want everyone to like me. So like I would always be bendy and this and that, whatever, and would just try to avoid conflict. And again, my mom's not like that. My sister's not like that. My grandma's not like that. All the women around me aren't like that. And then there's my wife, right? So like she's somebody who's super, super like, she's not scared to say what's on her mind. She'll give you the truth all the time. But growing up with even just, I would say, family like that, it's like you respect that. Having that full transparency and somebody who's always gonna tell you the truth. I don't want to walk out of the house and my hair looks like shit and everyone's like, oh, you look great.
Right.
I'd rather somebody tell me, go fix your freaking head, John, so you don't look like an asshole. So I think the biggest thing is there's it's so cool that that's what you would have there because you're always true, right? It's not easy to always be true because with always being true comes conflict, comes all these different variables out of it. So it's really, really respectable that you have that. So that's really cool. Yeah, and I love it. You do that instantly, even though you weren't prepped for that. You got that ready to go. So you did it. So okay. So where can people find you? So people, I want to engage with you. They have some questions or whatever. Talk about website, social, everything.
Perfect. So the website is sabrinawinterslaw.com. Got a whole bunch of information on there, self-scheduling for our design meeting. Also, I've got Instagram. I should have written that one down. And I've got TikTok. It's estate planning NC, I think, on one of them. And then I have a YouTube channel, North Carolina Estate Planning. So if you visit the website, all the links for my social media will be on there.
Yep. Yeah, if you want to look at her on Instagram, it's Estate Lawyer NC.
Yeah, thank you for knowing that and not
absolutely.
me. Absolutely. Just go out there.
Absolutely, that's what I'm here for. And again, Sabrina, I think time is the one asset we do not get back. So you spending it here with us, means the absolute world to me. And thank you for dropping some golden nuggets here today for people who are listening in on wisdom and in different areas of estate planning through your journey. And I love that, like, again, even in challenging situations, like you have something that's pretty edgy on your website, which I loved, which was I have a sad story, or my story's sad.
Yeah.
And I think that, like, again, like things like that, again, that comes through with you always being true. And I think that's attractive way more than it is like to push something away, because it's like, wow, that's real. That's people really respect authenticity in the generation and the time that we're living in, more than fabrication. So again, all the golden nuggets of wisdom you dropped today, I'm grateful for. And again, thank you so much.
Well, thank you for all the kind words and for letting me spend time with you today. It was amazing. I had a great time. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Anytime.